Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Adaptive Zone podcast. My name is Matthew Boyd. I'm a physiotherapist and running coach. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're so inclined, share it with a friend. Today, we're going to be sharing the story of one of our clients, my personal favorite client. We have Bill on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Matthew, thank you for your interest.
So, Bill, could you tell the listeners a little bit more about your background in running?
Okay, I'm actually a bit of a late bloomer. I really didn't start running until I was 40 years old, not because I was 40, but I happened to get shipped up to Edmonton to work on a great big software project for Alberta Health Services. At the time, I was, you know, fairly active. I like to bike and hike and stuff like that. And I bike to and from work, like bicycle. But I thought that was a bit of a dangerous proposition in Edmonton, and I didn't want to leave
Yeah.
my two young kids fatherless. So I thought, well, I got to do something besides sit in the apartment at night. And so I decided, well, I can run. So I ran from our apartment across the high level bridge and back, a grand total of about 3 kilometers. And that was before work, and it was fine. And I thought, well, you know what? I could do it better than that. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Edmonton, but there's the Ezio Ferrone Memorial Park. And it's 183 steps down from the top of the river valley to the bottom and then back up again, obviously. And so I do that a couple of times. And, after about 4 or 5 months working on the project, I thought, well, maybe I can get a little more, pardon me, a little more serious about the running. So I joined the local running club and ran with them for a little bit. I did the Learn to Run clinic, learned the marathon clinic, which was really interesting. In 2003, I had progressed to the point where I qualified for Boston and gone next year, which was really fun. And then become interested in trail running and started running ultra marathons. And that kept up for another almost 25 years. And, here I am in my mid 60s. I'm retired now. I think I've pretty much, resigned myself to saying goodbye to the really long ultras. But, looking back, I'm thinking, I might, maybe there's one more. But the issue I had was I had begun to register for the races more because people expected me to rather than because I really wanted to. And if you're going to do something like that, that's the wrong reason because it hurts a lot. And there's a lot of training involved. And, my motivation just spiraled. And of course, when that happens, you really don't train as much and you don't get motivated. And it's just a negative feedback cycle. And, so last year I finally decided to do something about it. And, I'd met you through the running club when you would still run with us with socks. And, thought, well, I'm going to give Matthew a go. And so here we are.
So when you were doing the ultras and you were saying that you felt like you were sort of obliged to do the races, but you didn't have the love for it that you once did. Like what had happened there? What had changed?
I think primarily I had lost my taste for the long runs in training. The training had become, as you had said in the previous podcast, running comfortably hard, the black hole of zone 3. I wasn't really training with a specific plan. I had a long range goal in mind, but no real guidance to get me ready for the race. I would, I'd like to do some gym work, but I hadn't pushed myself as hard as I should or could have. In my training, I probably did not run as often or as far as I should have. And you can fake a smaller race, but you can't fake a 50 or 100 miler. That's just not going to work.
Right. So it was It sounds like you felt like the training was a little stale, like you had these long runs and it was a bit like, like it's just another thing to do rather than being something you actually enjoyed.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. It was more a social thing of using the running as an opportunity to be with my friends, as opposed to a disciplined approach to training.
All right. And then as time passed, you sort of fell out of love with the races. You weren't really enjoying that so much. And then what happened after that with your running? Once you no longer had that desire to register and train for the races, can you sort of walk us through that next period for you?
Um, my my probably best performance at my last ultra was at Lost Soul. It was a 100-kilometer race, and I had someone from the club run the course backwards to meet me, and then run um, to pace me in. And it was brilliant. I'd never realized before how much difference a pacer would make. But at that time, I was still putting in solid mileage every week. Um, I was working out at the gym pretty regularly, although still not to a plan, but still fairly regularly. Um, and that felt pretty good. And I thought, well, I'd like to do it again, but then COVID happened. And then the year after Lost Soul reopened, I thought, well, this one more swan song. What could possibly go wrong? So I registered, and as I told you before, I made it partway through, and I had some ongoing postural issues with my running. Um, as we found out, I would lean forward with my head rather than hold it upright, and place the load squarely on my neck through my shoulders, and so it placed a strain on my back, and it would always hurt, and it was painful. And I got to about the 25K mark, and there was a part of the trail where it was kind of dished out, how trails sometimes get, and I wasn't really paying attention, or I was just playing clumsy, and I tripped and fell and wrenched my back, and my back just seized up, and I sort of hobbled into the aid station. Luckily, there was a physio there who helped, manipulate my back and relaxed it to the point where I could go again. And the two fellows that were with us from Red Deer, supporting us, they told me later that they're talking amongst themselves. They thought, he's not going to make it, but I did make it. I only had 75 kilometers to go, so that was good. But it was brutal. It was
Right.
brutal. I hurt for weeks after that. And
In your back?
yeah, in my back, just between my shoulder blades.
Yeah.
And of course, that's one of the reasons I came to see you, was A, for the running coaching, also because I have this persistent pain in between my shoulder blades. And it's just, it's just so demoralizing to have a not only a poor performance, but to be injured coming out of it. So that was no fun at all.
Yeah, and it sounds like a miserable experience as well of the day.
Well, yes, and the weather played a factor. There was another runner, a young lady who was quite an accomplished long distance runner, whom you know. She finished hours ahead of me, and since it had just started to rain, and if you're familiar with Lethbridge, when it rains there, the trails turn muddy and they close the course if it's too bad. Well, I just made the cutoff, and I literally had to claw my way up some of the paths. I was on my hands and knees with my hands just above the spikes on the poles, pulling my way up. I was chatting with one runner who dropped her pole and it slid on all the way down to the hill again. She said, "To hell with it. I'm not going back down to get it." She just abandoned it. It was that bad.
All right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I showed up at the hotel, sopping wet, muddy, with my mask on, of course, COVID. And she said I just looked absolutely pathetic. She said,
Right.
but I realized then that something had to change. Something had
Okay.
to change.
Well, so talk to me about what happened after that.
Well, I powdered for a while, and then I decided that, well, I've got to do something. I decided to become a little more specific in the gymnasium, working a little bit more on leg weights. But I had done CrossFit some years prior, and I'd injured my back doing squats incorrectly. And so, those are pretty much off the menu, but there are other exercises that I'd done, but really not a whole lot of structure. It was more, well, this feels comfortably hard and I'll stop there. But, having been on this program now, that you and your team have me on, I have to work, and you can see if I work or not. So there's not only accountability to myself, but to a third party who's looking over my shoulders thinking, oh yeah, he's progressing, or, it's a bad week, or maybe you could push a little harder this time. So I think that's made a big difference. And that's what was lacking in the past.
So you
structure.
Right. So you were getting into the gym, but you're running, you it sounds like you'd sort of fallen out of love with it a little bit at that point and weren't really sure where to go with the running. This would be like last year. Am I getting that timeline correct?
I think that's correct. All the runs that I was doing was, just comfortably hard. It was all pretty much the same intensity with just varying degrees of duration.
And were you getting pain in your back with those runs still, or had that gone away?
Yeah, no. At that time, I would still have pain in my shoulder blades. I hadn't become aware of what the underlying issue was. And so when I get to about an hour and a half, 15 kilometers ish, there'd just be a knot in my back. And it would be alleviated if I would run with poles, because then, my back is a little more correct. I wouldn't be hunched over and leaning over. And if I had the poles, I could put them out in front and I could stretch, and it would help, but it wouldn't solve the problem.
Okay. And then, so when you reached out to me, could you share with us like what you were hoping like to change?
I was hoping to get rid of the back pain and just get into a running program where I could see some structure and improvement. I think that was a big part of the problem before was, yes, I would run. And, I'd throw in some hills or a little bit of speed work in conjunction with the running clinic that we do in January. But after mid-May, when the clinic's over, well, it's racing season, and I would, I'd do a couple of races here and there, but no real maintenance, no real structure, not much in terms of recovery. So checking all the wrong boxes. But I thrive on structure, and I just wasn't getting it. So
So what do you remember of your first, say, month working with us in terms of what was different about what we were having you do versus what you had been doing?
Frankly, for the easier runs, I was wondering what I was doing out there, because it just seemed it was so slow. I mean, I could hardly run so slow and still stay in my zone. I could power walk almost as fast, which is okay. if that's what you want to do, and especially if you're doing an ultra and you're going up a long hill. Yeah, you don't want to run it; you want to power walk it. But it just the idea of having polarized runs, like easy runs and hard runs, that just hadn't clicked yet.
Okay.
So that was a big change.
So the easy runs got a bit too easy for you, and the hard runs. Can you describe what they were like?
They were surprisingly doable, actually.
Right.
We had done the 20 and 40-minute tests, and so we had figured out where I needed to be in my zones for heart rate. And once I started doing the speed work, it was more enjoyable than the hill work, which I almost liked in the past. The speed work, yeah, it's hard, but you get a break and it's doable. As long as you stay in your zone. And I was out this morning. In fact, it was kind of chilly, and I put my spikes on.
Yeah.
and I put my spikes on because that little track around the water detention pond is icy in spots. But it was very doable. And in fact, it was at the point where I'd hear my watch beeping and I'd tell me to slow down and slow down and slow down, you moron. I felt great. I had not felt happy looking forward to doing speed work in the past. It's just such a grind. We would just, in spite of all our teachings, we just go out. It was just a weekly race. You'd sprint until your tongue was hanging out and you were at the end. You turn around and you do it again. But then, of course, you do it slower and slower and slower all the time, right?
Yeah.
But doing it to heart rate, it's pretty easy at the start and the Goldilocks zone in the middle, and then you got to work right at the end. But you do it, and I think the benefits are starting to show.
Nice. Okay.
We went for a long run last Sunday, and coming back, I think my pace was probably 30 or 40 seconds per minute faster than I recall. So, yay.
Yeah.
Mind you, part of it was downhill. We went over 39th Street and back. But still, had a good pace going and still felt good.
And in terms of the structure and the plan for what you're doing now, how do you feel about that compared to where you're at before, where it was, well, I'll let you describe it.
Well, when I first started running, I had John Stanton's book.
Oh, yeah.
You can probably see it in the background, Learning to Run or whatever. And I followed that, and it worked pretty good. But then as you progress and you have some experience, don't need that anymore. And then usually the runs devolve into comfortably hard runs with your friends, and occasional hill work during the clinic. But other than that, not much. But I find now it's a lot easier when I have the week laid out in front, and I look and say, well, you know what, the grandsons have a taekwondo tournament or jiu-jitsu tournament on this day. I'm going to move it here. There's structure, but there's also flexibility. So I know that, well, if I'm going to be doing hills or sprints on Wednesday, I better not do too much on Tuesday so that I can, do my workout.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have that all set up in advance, and you know which ones are going to be harder, which ones are going to be easier, what days you're going to recover.
Yep. And again, it's surprising that the speed work, it's hard, but it's doable if you stay in your zone. And you get a day of recovery and away you go again.
Yeah. And do you miss that sort of medium pace, the comfortably hard runs that you used to do that we don't have you doing too much of right now?
Not really. I've got to the point now where, I just tell everybody in the running group, like, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to start with you guys, and I'll see you at the end. But I'm just going to do my own thing. See you later. And if I, let them go ahead, I'll do hills on Spruce Drive, or do speed work in the park to the east of the rec center. Great place for it. And I still get the social thing, but I do the workout.
Yeah. And how's your back doing now?
Oh, much better, thank you. I haven't had any issues with it for quite some time. My mantra, as I mentioned to Heidi, is run proudly. So,
Okay.
just up, keep your head up, and breathe easier, and it really does help. I was shocked really at looking at the video how far my head tilted forward when you had pointed it out. Doing the video thing on the treadmill. So that was good to see, and it feels good actually.
Yeah, and as we looked at the time, it wasn't that you weren't stiff or anything. You didn't have to be in that position. Your body had just found itself there. And it's I always liken it to like if you held a bowling ball in your hand and then just like held it out in front of you. Your shoulder will just be exhausted really quickly. And that's what you're kind of doing to those muscles in your mid-back. If you have your head sort of tipped forwards and over, it's like holding that bowling ball out in front of you. And after a while, those muscles, they just get tired.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And that's one thing I'm really happy to have resolved.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much the gym work plays into it, but the deadlifts and the upper body work, it's certainly not hurting it at all. And I really think it does help, with a little bit of strengthening.
Yes, because then you have the capacity to tolerate all the miles that you're doing, which are steadily creeping up. And so where are you going now with your running, now that you're starting to see the pace increase as you've polarized your training and you've got that consistency back? What is the next 6-12 months hold for Bill?
Well, I've set myself a goal of doing very well in the 5 Peaks races. There's obviously 5 in the 5 Peaks, but I also enjoy my photography, and I've signed up for 2 photo workshops. So that, of course, they right on the same weekend as 5 Peaks. And then I signed up for the Spartan here in Red Deer, which requires overall fitness, which I'm a big believer in. So, of course, it's another 5 Peaks weekend. So I can only do 2 of the 5 Peaks, but that's okay. I want to do well in each one, place in my age category, the senior clown division, and we'll go from there. I may consider an ultra. Who knows?
Okay. So even thinking about that again. And do you feel like you've found what was missing with your running before? Because you've obviously got a great love of running. You've been doing it for a very long time. I remember when we first met, you just didn't seem that excited about it anymore. I don't know how you're feeling now.
Well, it's certainly more fun to go out when the weather's nice.
Yeah, it is a little. It's hard to enjoy it
sketchy,
right now.
but when you feel physically better, when your back doesn't hurt, when you have a structure and you can see improvement, well, now you have some encouragement. You have a further incentive, to train harder, to actually go out and run when you think, well, it's kind of sketchy outside. Maybe I'll just, skip this one and work harder next time. Well, that never happens.
No.
So I think that, the 5 Peaks, the ultra maybe next year. Well, we'll see what happens. But
okay.
No, I enjoy the overall fitness. I want to be strong enough to be able to keep up to my two grandsons as long as I can. And they're getting bigger and faster all the time, so I got to keep working at it.
How old are they now?
8 and 6.
All right, okay. Yeah, they're going to get harder to keep up with as they
Yes,
get
yeah.
into their teens.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us and how you turned things around, the changes you made in your training. It's going to be very illuminating, I think, for a lot of runners who will resonate with a lot of those challenges. So that's definitely going to be very helpful for people. So thank you for coming on the show, Bill.
Matthew, thank you for your interest.